C'est écoute 𝐸𝐿exivi.
Kristin, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well, Lexi. How are you?
Good. I'm so honored for you to come and spend some time with me today.
I'm glad to be here. You let me in to show my wild side, so I'm excited.
Where are your people from, Kristin? Where are you from? How'd you get here? What's going on?
So I am from Little Rock, Arkansas, currently residing in Atlanta, Georgia. And when people hear Arkansas, they hear country. And that is absolutely 100% correct. My family is from Marietta, Arkansas. I was born and raised in Little Rock and attended college in Arkadelphia, Arkansas at Henderson State University. And so a lot of my being and how I've developed and found my voice just in life has come from being the minority in the room or the underdog, and being willing to step outside of my comfort zone and be the person to speak up. So there's a lot of passion, a lot of fire that come from the folks in Arkansas.
And I just want to say, Kristin, there is nothing wrong with being country, okay? There is nothing wrong with it. And I'm really tired of the media saying that there is. So I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, but all my people are from the South. And I'm like, there is nothing wrong from being country, okay? If anything, country people got and home training and seasoned food. And right now in the world, that's sometimes all you can ask for, sis, okay? So in the line of work that you do, you're doing a lot of conversations around performance management, not only as an organization, but also just individuals who work for organizations. What is performance management, Kristin? Because I'm sure people have 85 and a half different definitions, but I want to hear it from you. What is performance management?
Yeah, so I'll kind of break this down a little bit and keep it simple. So performance management 101. So this is the continuous process of identifying, of measuring and developing the performance of individuals and teams to align to an organization's strategic goals. And so there are really 4 parts that come to mind when I think about performance management. It's goal setting, it's monitoring, it's feedback, and its development. And so all of those 4 core elements create performance management, but they also are the foundation for what I know we're going to jump into and talk about later, which is around your performance narrative and really what that means.
Oh, fam, we're going to talk about it now because that's what I care about, okay? As a hiring manager, as a person who manages people, as a person who manages themselves, okay? Because I am aware that my performance in my career, I actually own. I want to dive right into how to own your performance narrative. And so my first question in this context for you is, what are some of the trends that you see of people actively not owning their narrative? What are the red flags? What are some behaviors that we should not be doing that do not help us in this realm?
Actually, I'm in the middle of writing a book with a group of other ladies, and the section that I'm writing is about performance narrative and how to own that. And part of that story is me getting vulnerable and sharing about how I did not own my performance narrative and really what the outcomes look like. So a couple of signs or flags to look out for someone who is not owning their performance narrative is that they look to place blame. There's lack of accountability. They don't seek clarity on what it is that they are going to be held responsible and accountable for. They kind of operate without a plan or without a strategy. They lean on just a good relationship or the thought of a good relationship to carry them to the next level. Again, they can't talk to you about what their impact and what their contributions were at any given point in time. And so those are some flags to kind of look out for when it comes to not owning that performance narrative. Anything that you are having to really depend on someone else for, where you can't substantiate your efforts in trying to create success, that means you're not owning your performance narrative.
As a manager and as a mentor, not as a specialist like you are, girl, the number of people that come to me for performance advice, and then I say things like, when is the performance review? And they don't know. Or they come to me about promo, because, performance narratives also align with promotions. And then I say, well, what is your level right now? And they don't know. And as a person who is not you, right, because you are the guru in this, I've never worked in HR, I've never worked directly in this. I'm like, how are you going to ask me for help, but you don't even know the basics of when things are due and what you're trying to do? Have you seen that before as well?
Oh, absolutely. One too many times before. And to your point around promotions, around 66% of organizations are still making performance and promotion decisions simultaneously. And all of that is linked to your compensation. And so most times we want to get promoted in the workplace because we want a title change. We want more pay for maybe doing more work already. But it's about how are you able to communicate and articulate the value that you've already brought and what you're looking to receive from the organization. And it's hard to do that without understanding, well, where are you currently? And what are the opportunities that you have to develop? So I think that's really important.
So how do we own this? Let's just get right into it. What is the first step of owning your performance narrative? So you started a new job, you're 30 days in, Kristin. What are we doing? What's the first step to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success when it is time to have these crucial conversations?
So this is what I call setting up your systems of success. There are a couple of things that you need to do. The first thing that you need to do is go ahead and get some time on the calendar with your manager on a regular basis. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to meet with this person every single week as someone that's new starting. Maybe you choose to do that for the first couple of weeks and then you transition to something that's more less frequent, like bi-weekly or monthly. But go ahead and start finding how to meet with those key stakeholders. That's also making the assumption that you've been able to identify those stakeholders or your manager has already given you who those stakeholders are. If they have not given you those stakeholders, then it is your job to identify who are my key stakeholders in this role, find them, and then schedule time to introduce yourself. The second thing I would say is to make sure that you have your organization system set up. And I'm talking about myself here in this moment as well. Sometimes the inbox can just get out of hand, right? And so being able to have your inbox organized with folders, however you see fit, but also your computer folders need to be set up appropriately. So where are you tracking your one-on-one meeting notes? Because I'm assuming if you're going to a meeting, you're also taking notes. Where are you tracking your team or stakeholder meeting notes at? That needs to be a separate space. Where are you keeping track of your performance highlights? Where are you keeping track of your goals at? Have you created what your 30, 60, 90-day plan looks like? Not that someone give you a plan, but did you create one? And that's based around the objective of what do you want to have accomplished in this first 90 days on the job? That may not be, oh, I want to get this project done. Maybe it's, hey, I want to build a solid relationship with each of my key stakeholders. And then you work backwards on how you can support that. And so it's making sure that you get clarity in those first 90 days of what you are going to be responsible for going forward. Do not get past the 90-day mark. And I'm saying 90 to be lenient, but really it should be like 30 or 60. Do not get past that time frame without understanding what you are going to be evaluated on. What are the ways of working that's going to be evaluated? Establish those ways of working with different people on your team. And when I say ways of working, it means, how do you like to receive communication, feedback? How often do you want to partner with this person? What does collaboration look like? What are some of the habits or preferences that you have when it comes to working with someone? So those are just a few things around how someone can kind of get started in those first 30 days. But you should be feeling confident after being at the organization for 30 to 90 days. And if you're not, take a step back and reevaluate what systems of success am I missing in this process.
You're so much nicer than me because I'm going to just say it. If your manager is not meeting with you on a weekly or doesn't want to, you need a new manager, okay? You need a new manager. And Kristin, I've heard those stories before and I'm always like, I'm not saying to go to work and quit your job. Like, I don't know what your finances look like today, but I am saying that if you have a direct manager who is not, when you come into the role, saying, so what day of the week do you want to meet on a weekly basis? That to me is a red flag that you need a new human as soon as possible. Because to me, that means that they do not want to have these performance narrative conversations with you. And that is very, very concerning. Also, I'd like to add, girl, you're right. 90 days is not good enough. You need to know this in the first 30. So once we do that, what is the next step? So now we've put time on our manager's calendar. We're meeting once a week. We are writing things down. Actually, take a step back. Tell me more about the importance of writing things down, because Kristin, you said goal setting. You said having folders on your laptop of where those goals are. You mentioned something about having notes from your one-on-one. Is it important to write this stuff down? And if it is, why?
It absolutely is. And I'm going to take a quick step back, and I want to in more detail describe the performance narrative, why it's important, and then the behaviors of like taking the notes and having the systems of success and why that piece is so important. So with your performance narrative, it describes your work performance, your contributions, and your achievements over a specific period of time. And as equally important, it's about how others are experiencing you in the workplace. It provides a way for you to frame your expectations, your experiences, highlight your success, address challenges that come up along the way, and demonstrate, how you align your efforts to the organization's goals. And I think I mentioned to you earlier that in the book, I'll be sharing a personal experience, but part of that experience is, your word versus someone else's. And, sitting in the seat of someone who has worked in HR, but HR for HR as well, and having to have those interactions, is that when it comes down to reducing and minimizing risk for the organization, what HR should be doing is making sure that you're getting what you need as an employee, that the person that is your manager is also providing you what you need, but that they're also holding you accountable. And a way that you hold yourself accountable and that manager indirectly is by being organized. And so I think sometimes when we have the conversation of taking notes or recording a call or having these systems set up, sometimes it's framed in the sense of to protect yourself, when really these are just the foundations of good work habits. So if you're showing up to do good work, don't you want to keep good notes? Don't you want to be able to tell how you created impact? Don't you want to be proud of those things? And so I think if we start to shift our mindset on how we think about this is about what can I get out of this experience while providing value for the company. You got to be able to talk about it. And that requires you to have these systems and to keep good documentation. You don't want to be caught without it, especially if you have some kind of only experience in the workplace, or you experience retaliation or discrimination, because all managers are not good managers. Some folks were just good at their jobs, they got promoted. Doesn't mean that they were actually people leaders. And so you have to be able to advocate for yourself, but you need evidence to advocate for yourself.
And honestly, sis, some people are good managers to other people and not good managers to you. And I know that sounds really negative, but at least in my own personal work traumatic experience, I have also received that, where my manager is wonderful to my peer, but for whatever reason, however I walk in the world, twerk in the world, dance in the world, they don't like me. And I think that we do have to own as adults that especially in capitalism, when it comes to your paycheck, there may be some people who just don't like you and therefore do not have your best interest at heart. And so it sounds like having those notes, having those receipts are very important to advocate for yourself.
Absolutely. They are a must-have, because you don't want to be in a situation where it is your word versus mine. And I come from the startup community as well, and a lot of those early relationships and positions are based on friendship, who's in network. And so many times the relationships exist behind the scenes that you are not privy to. And so it inside the organization that may not go the way that you want it to. But again, being able to advocate for yourself externally is equally important. And again, if HR is involved and we're reducing risk for the organization, and you show me what this person or this manager is performing differently with other individuals on the team, I see that as a flag, right? Because I want to reduce risk. There needs to be some manager training involved. How are we creating an environment that is inclusive, that is psychologically safe, and that is equitable for everyone that's showing up? And sometimes it could be removing that manager, not saying to help me do it, but don't make it hard on me.
So we're doing our job. We're doing our thing. We listen to Auntie Kristin. We got our 30 days in. We know what we're supposed to do. We're taking our good notes. Managers have one-on-ones. I'm 6 months into this job. It just so happens that it's now time for performance review, right? It is now time to go into some kind of tool and basically say, here are all the amazing things I did. As I tell my team members, this is why you should pay me more. That's that section, right? This is why I am Beyonce. I help your life. These are the things that make me, that I do, that make you look better. That's that section. Then there's the section of, this is what I want to work on, right? Coming up in the new year. How are we navigating that? What are the strategic tips and tricks to get into that so we can receive the best benefit?
6 things I want us to kind of anchor to when it comes to preparing to write that performance narrative. And then I want to talk about a couple of things around how do we navigate feedback and growth areas. So when it comes to preparing to share that performance narrative, one, you need to have a clear list and idea of your key achievements and your contributions. So these can be projects that you've completed, innovations, right? Because sometimes we give our intellectual property or we invent new things for the organization. Your leadership and team efforts or problem-solving skills that may have impacted the organization positively. The second thing is that you want to talk about the alignment with the company goals. If what you are doing does not help the company meet its long-term objectives or goals or priorities for that year, then it's hard to show your value. So being able to connect your individual goals and performance with the broader organizational objectives is really important. The third thing is openly talking about your challenges and solutions. And so a well-crafted performance narrative acknowledges any challenges faced during the review period, but it also highlights how you overcame them or what you're actively doing to get better. This is going to show resilience. It'll show adaptability. It'll show problem-solving skills. And then the fourth thing is areas of improvement. And we'll circle back to this piece a little bit in a second. But for your areas of improvement, you may also include areas that you are actively working on improving, right? Showing self-awareness, which lacks a lot for some reason, but showing self-awareness and a proactive attitude towards personal development. So you have to prioritize the gaps that you've been able to see as well. The fifth thing that it should include is your future goals. So we talked about promotions earlier. This is a great time to go ahead and give that manager a little nugget that, here's what I want to work on in the future and here's why. So if that promotion is top of mind for you, or if a new role or transition is top of mind for you, here's a great way to try to bake that into your future goals. So again, this is a forward-looking element, outline, your future goals and how you can continue contributing to the company's success. And then the last piece is that piece that we just talked about, that's supporting evidence. So your narrative needs to be backed by data or specific examples and to provide concrete evidence of your performance. So this could include metrics. It could include feedback from colleagues or stakeholders or clients, and any other measurable result. And again, sometimes that supporting evidence means that you are keeping record of conversations. You are keeping a record of interactions with your peers or stakeholders and your manager. And again, you may need this a little bit later on if you have to navigate or advocate for yourself. Now, I want to navigate back to the component around addressing those areas for feedback and growth. I don't know about you, but I got some feedback in a review one time that called me defensive and aggressive.
Like, that that is a separate episode that could last hours. But I always tell people I've been called everything but a child of God and feedback. Okay. I think, Kristin, feedback is a gift. And because I have home training in 𝐽𝐾, I will take the gift. Now, what I do with the gift is my business, right? But yes, I'm not going to lie to you. I've been called everything but a child of God. But go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it can get really interesting. And I want to provide some distinction on feedback versus an opinion. Okay. So feedback, to your point, Lexi, is inherently positive. It's either redirecting you to do something different, or it is reinforcing, but telling you to continue to do something that you're already doing. Right. But feedback is action-based. It is an acknowledgement of what someone observed. They can talk about how it impacted others around the situation. It gives space for you to share your perspective. And then it creates next steps. What are the actions that should come from this feedback versus someone just saying their opinion? Well, I didn't really like how you did that. And that's okay. You don't like, I have zero expectation for someone to like how I do 100% of something. However, is that your preference, or did I not perform well? Right? That's the distinction. Feedback is actionable, and the opinion is just someone what they like and what they didn't like, and how much of that is personal preference or personal bias. So the first thing you want to do when you get feedback or you have those development areas is you want to listen actively. Try not to get defensive, stay open-minded, and just listen. Listen without interrupting. Again, this is going to show the respect. It'll, minimize any other kind of riffraff or someone making assumptions after that conversation. But also you want to seek clarification. So when I talked about the feedback being very detailed and specific, ask. So don't let someone give you a blanket statement or a blanket opinion. Well, I didn't like X, Y, and Z. Well, can you tell me more about that? Tell me, make it a bit more clear. What should it have, looked like? Because then it gets into the semantics of, well, when did you communicate that? So you have to dissect it. So just ask for clarification, because you also don't want to make an assumption that you understand what they're saying without them being very clear. The third thing is you want to acknowledge the feedback. Thank you so much for sharing that information with me. I appreciate it. I will take the information back, and then I'm going to do what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to reflect, right? You're going to reflect, because there could be something that you could take out of there that's applicable. So you take what you need and you leave the rest. And also be mindful of who's giving you that feedback. Everybody doesn't deserve to give you feedback. That's all I'm going to say. All right. So everyone doesn't deserve to give you feedback, but they may. And then once you've gotten the feedback and you've had a chance to reflect and take what you need from that, you create the action plan. What are going to be the steps that you identify that help you to progress in the areas that you think are most important? And then also, how do you create accountability in that? Do you send a follow-up 2 or 3 months later to the person that gave you some feedback that you found to be valuable? Hey, thanks so much for sharing this with me. Here's what I've been doing since, and your feedback has, really helped me in this particular way, so that it shows your commitment to showing up. And maybe that person will be more open to giving you more thoughtful, more meaningful feedback as well. Hope that answered the question.
It did. And I'm so glad you answered it in that way, because I do think that especially as dark-skinned Black women, a lot of conversations around feedback, because of bias in the workplace, are like, oh, you giving an opinion. I don't want to deal with this. Even you said, I've received feedback that I'm aggressive, which is a lot, but okay, right? But I don't think that we also talk enough about, like, you are only going to get better if you actually have feedback. And I'm not going to lie to you, Kristin, there have been times where I have tried to give someone feedback, not an opinion, but a feedback, because I actively care about their growth, right? I always tell people, if I'm coming to you with feedback and you don't directly report to me, I love you. Because I really could keep my mouth closed and be Black, blessed, lotioned, and left alone. Like, literally, right? So the fact that I'm taking time out of my day to actively come have a conversation with you, and it's not an opinion, right? It is like, this is what I saw. And like, maybe if you like tailored it a little bit differently, means that I'm coming from a great place. But I've definitely sometimes received the backlash from trauma, from oppression, and as a fellow non-white body in the world, I know where that comes from, so I have a lot of empathy. But people are not receiving the feedback. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, I have. Honestly, I've been on both ends of the spectrum, and if I'm being honest with myself and the folks who are listening to this, I don't think I got good at receiving feedback until maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. It was after the incident of having to challenge the bias in the performance review. Um, and the opinion that was provided in the review was not the feedback, but I had some colleagues who were giving me some very thoughtful feedback based on what they've seen in the organization, and how they have witnessed people's body language shift when I'm entering the room. And it was something to be more thoughtful about, and just to be more mindful of, and to be able to reflect and make a decision of how do I want to interact with people? What do I want that brand to look like? How do I think about quality in presenting something? My co-founder now, she has been in the quality and regulations and compliance space for about 15 years. And so she has a natural eye for quality. Whereas I'm more on the spectrum of, we got to get this done. I'm very, like, I don't make things pretty per se, but I get the facts right. And so, I've gotten feedback even from her to make sure that, the font is the same on all the slides, which is like some of the basic stuffs, right? But it's also, what kind of story is this slide telling? And so because I'm open and receptive to the feedback, my presentations look 10 times better than they did a year ago, right? But it also required me to be honest, like, oh, this actually doesn't look that great. Thank you for being comfortable enough to come share it with me. I think I've also gotten 10 times better at sharing feedback, just from professional development, in my role in HR, but also just the experience of how well someone receives it when it's delivered in a certain way. And so if anyone has any questions around feedback or what's the best way to give it and receive it, check out the 𝐬𝐭 model. That is a really interesting framework. It describes exactly what each of those areas are, but it allows you to kind of create a path and prepare to share feedback with someone. And if you know that you're going to be getting feedback, it prepares you mentally to be able to receive it and process it and respond in a way that's healthy.
I received some feedback years ago that I thought was very interesting. It was like feedback within feedback, where I started noticing that whenever someone wanted to bring me feedback, there was trepidation. The body language was nervous. It was as if they were going to tell me something really, really bad. I've had managers in my past say, I was really scared about telling you that. Because, fun fact, Kristin, I'm actually really good at receiving feedback. And the reason why, I think, is because growing up, I was in musical theater. I did a lot of professional musical theater. So I always tell people who don't know that, I'm like, I've been called everything but a child of God at the young age of 12. So there's really nothing that you can tell me that I've either not have heard before, but I've been trained to have to stand there and not only take feedback, but also take opinions, and smile through them. And so the feedback within the feedback that I received years ago, which made me have to work on how I interact at work, is people were coming to me clearly very nervous about giving me really good feedback. And then as soon as I took it well, they were like, whew, I thought it wasn't going to be good. And so I had to sit with that and say, now, wait a minute. Why does everyone who wants to give me feedback think that I'm going to cuss them out after they give it to me? Why is the response, oh, thank God she took it well? And I took that to a mentor of mine who then had to give me feedback on how I present at work. And it was transformative.
I'm also going to say that and don't be afraid to challenge people in a way that is thoughtful, right? Oh, well, I'm so glad I could come to you and tell you that I was super nervous. Well, I want to talk about why you're nervous as well. That could be a different side of me. But I want to talk about why you're nervous though. And I want you to tell me specifically, because that also in that learning moment for you, it can also be a learning moment for them as well.
I think a lot of people sometimes ask for the feedback when it's performance review. And how I define performance review in this moment is like that time where the official HR email comes out and says, go to this portal and write down your things. And then that's going to be sent to your manager. And then you're going to get a grade. And then that grade will decide how much of a bonus you get. When is the right time to ask for feedback? Is it just that official grading period, or are there other times that are more strategic to ask for feedback and then therefore implement said feedback?
The key game changer here, what you said, is strategic, because my initial, when I was listening, I was like, oh, well, it depends on the person, right? Some people like to receive feedback immediately on a project after it's done. Some people want to do work, get feedback so they can make corrections early before progressing. But if we're talking about, how often should you, get feedback as it relates to your performance narrative holistically, at minimum on a monthly basis. And the way that I recommend folks capture that feedback is, one, if you have a more sophisticated performance management system, then the system likely has a component where you can request feedback from individuals in the organization, or where you can give someone feedback in the system that's in the organization. If that does not exist, then I would say, as you are sending out a monthly or a quarterly stakeholder newsletter or progress report or engagement space, create space in that report for them to give you feedback. Maybe you create a link that says, thank you so much for reading this, monthly report. Please use this link to provide direct feedback. Or you can take it a step further and you can just create your own system or loop for collecting feedback on a regular basis. Most people are busy at work, so they may be able to give you some good consolidated information on a quarterly basis. If you are at a smaller organization, or folks who have a bit more time, they can give it to you monthly. But send an email. Saying, hey, hoping to capture some feedback. And I'm saying send an email after you've had a conversation, letting them know that you're going to be asking for feedback. And be specific about what you want feedback on. Are you requesting feedback about collaboration? Are you requesting feedback about communication style? Are you requesting feedback about the quality of the work? And so sometimes when we ask people for feedback, we leave it open. And we need to be specific about, well, what do you want to receive feedback on? Because if you're requesting feedback, the assumption is that you're trying to develop a particular competency or areas or skill. So be clear about what you want the feedback on, and be clear about who you get that feedback from. Send the request. Send it via email. Don't make it, rocket science.
Help me help you. Help me help you.
No more than 3 questions.
Yes, please. Please, please. I got a day job, but help me help you. Kristin, reintroduce yourself to us. Who are you?
Kristin is a disruptor of inequitable systems that create space for the underprivileged, the underserved, the historically excluded, and the underestimated.
I love that. Well, thank you for disrupting in the best way this conversation and helping us better understand this is what's happening, and this is how you receive feedback, and this is how you don't receive opinions. So I think that this will really, really help folks. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.